Hey everybody, Corey here coming at you with another knife video. Today it is story time. I just wanted to kind of talk about the irony of my channel name. I've been talking with Tyler over at Everyday EDC about this, and being a YouTuber, sometimes it can be hard trying to lock down exactly what your content is or what format you want to present it in or what your core theme is going to be. And I'll be the first to admit my core theme has changed drastically since I started the channel. And as a matter of fact, it's arguably the exact opposite of what it previously was. So, the Practical Blade. How did the Practical Blade come to be? Well, after I got burned on my ZT, which was my first expensive knife purchase, I kind of vowed to put the ZT to shame by finding budget knives that, in my opinion, performed better than the ZT. This wasn't necessarily hard to do. My ZT had a lot of problems with it, and there are a lot of companies making a lot of great budget knives. So the theme of the channel initially was finding budget knives that performed way above the price point that they were being sold at. But for me, that became kind of old very quickly. I think it's pretty evident that the budget knife category is highly saturated at this point. Companies like Civivi are just pumping out these budget knives day after day, and honestly, they're all really good. Um, I can't remember the last time the community unanimously decided that one of these knives was just a bad knife, right? There are some that stand out more than others in a good way, but I truly can't remember the last time someone just said a knife was horrible when it was manufactured by one of these reputable companies. Anyhow, um, as someone creating YouTube content and as someone who is just still developing their tastes as a knife collector, it quickly became apparent to me that that type of content wasn't sustainable. One, because I was lost in a sea of other people who were already doing the exact same thing, and two, because budget knives were kind of losing their allure for me. I said it before, I'll say it again. Budget knives are just good. They're all really good. In my opinion, the vast majority of them don't do anything too crazy from a mechanical standpoint, from a material standpoint. I do think Civivi is the company to go with if you're looking for the most unique offerings. I think Civivi has done a great job bringing out all of these high-end materials into lower cost knives, and they're doing great work there. But for me, both from a channel perspective and from a personal perspective, I quickly became interested in more expensive knives. And it's a very generic thing to say, right? I'm kind of categorizing anything as like $200 and above as an expensive knife. We all know the ceiling for that; just it goes through the roof, right? But as of late, I've really been kind of hovering in the $250 to $500 range. That's where my interest just currently is. It has nothing to do with being pretentious. It has nothing to do with being a snob. But for me personally, I am just at my core, I'm kind of genuinely interested in what that kind of money can bring you, right? From the knife world. I've seen enough budget knives, right? I know that they're all good. I know that they basically just come down to like, do you like the way the knife looks, and does it function well as a knife? Which for the most part, all the knives function well, and you get to pick what it looks like by just picking the knife that you want. But when it comes to the higher end stuff, you know, they have to prove themselves, right? These higher end knives have to, at the very least, baseline, be as good as the lower end knives from a functional perspective, from a QC perspective. Um, that can vary, when you start getting into knives that are so expensive or so exotic that they basically become art. But one of the mantras that I live by, and it's funny because we're kind of coming back to the practicality of the practical blade. Um, One of the mantras that I live by in the knife world is that no matter how pretty a knife is, or what materials it's made of, or how different the knife is trying to be, if it doesn't look like it's going to be a good knife, I'm really not interested in it. Because at the end of the day, believe it or not, I do use all of my knives. Now, some of them, yes, I dedicate them to essentially being beaten up, right? I finally caved. I bought a Spyderco PM2, and that's the one that I just beat up on all day. But for me, again, from an interesting standpoint, I want to know what these higher end knife companies have to offer. I want to know if the hype for Hinderer is real. I want to know if the hype for Chris Reeve is real. I want to know if the hype for Rayot is real. Spoiler alert. Oh, the hype for Rayot, it is so real, but I don't want to get into that here. But, essentially, I have to think about this from a YouTube standpoint and from a personal standpoint, because YouTube, for anybody, will never be sustainable as a creator if you don't like what you're doing. And believe me, I have reviewed knives, have tried to review some knives that I just hated. I knew going into it, I hated the knife. And it took me forever to get the reviews out, or you can tell that I just kind of half-assed the reviews. There's a pretty good chance that if I have a review under 10 minutes, it's because whether I had good things to say about the knife or not, I didn't like the knife, right? I just put out a video on the Bestech Swordfish. It's an amazing knife. It's an amazing value knife, but I already sold it because it doesn't have a home in my collection. It's not doing anything novel in my collection other than bringing amazing value, which is great. But I've already got a bunch of other knives that I use and that I don't need value to be delivered on. So what is it exactly that I look for in a knife? Well, QC, numero uno, QC is where we have to start, right? I don't care, I've said this before, I don't care how pretty your knife is. If you can't get it centered, if you can't get rid of blade play, if you can't get the screws to stop backing out, and if you can't get a good grind on it, I don't want it. Because at the end of the day, I truly am purchasing knives. My priority is to purchase a tool first and a piece of art second. I think it's cool to have a knife that's a piece of art. I'm just saying that I think it still should fundamentally be a good knife. So as far as the practical blade is concerned, I'm still pretty practical there. And I have been burned. I've got some knives over $500 that I think could use a little bit of work in the practicality department. But from a YouTube standpoint, I want to do this, and I started doing this from day one in an attempt to bring value to my subscribers or just my viewers in general. And I don't feel like I can bring any more substantial value to you guys in the budget knife world. There are thousands, literally thousands of people putting up videos every single day about budget knives, and that's great. I love that the community is this active, and more prevalently, there are these extremely popular channels that have already got these budget knives covered, right? So, for me to be the 200th person to tell you that the Civivi Elementum is a good knife, it doesn't do anything for you, right? And it doesn't do anything for me. It's very evident when a knife is good, when a knife is bad, and everybody else is already going to tell you that. For me personally, this really kind of hit home when I started getting into the higher end stuff. Unless we're talking about knives that are extremely popular, like the Hinderers or the Medfords or the Chris Reeves, even Rayots. This is the Rayot K2. It's black. It's the Knife Joker exclusive edition. There are not a lot of high-profile YouTubers who have reviews of this knife on their channel. And it's not to say that random Joe Schmoes with small channels, I mean, my channel's kind of small, it's not to say that those people can't put out good reviews, but I found that the community seems to be really lacking in channels reviewing knives other than the most mainstream knives in the $200 to $500 price range. I think there's some value that I can bring there, and it does happen to align with my current interests. So right now, you may have noticed that the price range has kind of gone up a little bit on my channel over the past, 6 months-ish. It was when I bought my Sebenza that it really ruined it all for me, and I just got into the world of the expensive stuff, and I started to love it. But, that's not to say I'll never review budget knives. I've got buddies who send me knives. I do get lured in by budget knives if they look like they're doing something interesting every now and then, and I'll still be putting those up on the channel. But from a community perspective, I feel like the place where I'm going to end up bringing the most value is doing what I do best, being very anal, almost to the point of it being ridiculous, and ripping apart these expensive knives, because y'all know I have no issue telling you that a very expensive knife isn't the greatest knife in the world. I don't want to be completely negative about it, but I think the knife world could use a bit of reality. I think the knife world needs less people just constantly singing the praises of every single knife that they touch, and more people maybe being a little bit more realistic, because believe it or not, just because you spend $400, $500, $1,000 on something, it doesn't mean you're going to get a perfect product. And sometimes it doesn't even mean you're going to get a good product. But that's a discussion for another time. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this. If there's anything you want to talk about, just drop it in the comments in this video. I sincerely do enjoy talking to all of you. The people who frequently comment on my videos, they're my favorite people. I love seeing the same names over and over again, and I'm always happy to have an open dialogue with all of you. So, hope you guys enjoyed this. I will see you guys next time.